Dust swirls across the African savanna, kicked up by thousands of restless hooves. The beat of war drums echoes from behind high mud-brick walls. An army of cavalry, armored and impatient, waits for the signal to charge. At the head of this force isn't a king, not a general, not a chief. It's a woman, a queen, clad in chainmail and leather, a spear held firmly in her hand, her eyes locked on the horizon. Her name is Amina of Zazzau, the warrior, queen of Houseland. She was the woman who forged a kingdom into an empire, and ruled the north with an iron will and a steel spear. Amina was born sometime in the 16th century in the city-state of Zazzau, which is now the modern city of Zaria in northern Nigeria. As a princess, her path seemed set, but she wasn't interested in the life prescribed for royal girls. While others were learning embroidery, court etiquette, and how to manage a household, Amina was learning swordplay, horsemanship, and military strategy. She spent her days in the training yard with the warriors of Zazzau. She learned to ride as if born on horseback, to draw a bow with deadly accuracy, and to read the chaos of a battlefield like others might read a poem. At first, the seasoned generals probably chuckled. A girl in the training yard, a princess in the dust and sweat of combat, but that laughter didn't last long. It's hard to laugh when the girl starts to outfight, outride, and outthink your best soldiers. By the time she was a young woman, Amina was no longer just training. She was on the front lines, riding into real campaigns alongside her father, the king, and her brother. She wasn't a fragile princess to be protected behind the city walls. She was a fierce fighter to be feared on the open plains. Battle after battle, she proved her worth, earning the respect not of courtiers, but of warriors. She wasn't just royalty, she was a commander in the making. Years later, her brother, who had become king, died. The throne of Zazzau was suddenly empty. In the corridors of power, the chiefs and nobles began their political games. They whispered, they schemed, they formed alliances. But on one thing, they all agreed: a man would take the crown. That was the way of the world. But they hadn't accounted for Amina. She didn't wait to be offered a place. She didn't plead for her right to rule. She walked into the center of the storm and claimed the throne for herself. And when she was crowned Queen Amina of Zazzau, she made a silent promise that would soon echo across the entire region. Her reign would not be one of quiet diplomacy. It would be a reign of conquest. Most queens of her time ruled from the safety of their palaces. They sent out orders, managed their courts, and left the fighting to men. Amina shattered that mold. She strapped on her armor, mounted her favorite war horse, and rode out at the head of her army. She didn't send her soldiers to war. She led them. Under her personal command, the cavalry of Zazzau became legendary. They were known for their speed, their discipline, and their terrifying effectiveness. They would appear on the horizon like a sudden storm, a wave of spears and thundering hooves, crashing down on their enemies. They would strike secure victory and spoils, and vanish before their foes could even mount a proper defense. Amina's tactics were brilliant, aggressive, and incredibly successful. She launched campaign after campaign, relentlessly pushing the borders of Zazzau farther than any ruler before her. Her armies marched north toward the vast Sahara Desert, south into the dense forests, and west and east across the critical trade routes that were the lifeblood of West Africa. These routes carried gold, salt, cola, nuts, cloth, and enslaved people, the wealth of nations. Cities and states that had once dismissed Zazzau as a minor power now trembled at the mention of her name. They learned that when Amina's army arrived, you didn't negotiate terms. You opened your gates. She didn't just want to trade with the world, she intended to command it. Her ambition was as vast as the lands she now controlled. But Amina was more than just a brilliant warrior. She was a visionary builder and a shrewd strategist. Conquering territory was one thing, holding it was another. As she expanded her empire, she ordered the construction of massive defensive walls around her new cities and camps. These weren't simple fences. They were formidable earthen fortifications, long, high barriers that secured her territory and protected her trade routes. For centuries after her death, these structures were known across Hausa as Ganyo or Amina's walls. They crisscrossed the landscape like permanent scars of her ambition, a tangible, visible legacy of her power. They were proof that she hadn't just passed through. She had come to stay. Amina understood a fundamental truth that many rulers miss. True power isn't just about winning battles. It's about consolidating your gains and building something that lasts. As her empire grew, so did her legend. Stories about Queen Amina spread like wildfire, carried by traders and travelers along the very routes she now controlled. They said she never backed down from a challenge, no matter the odds. They said she could ride for days and nights without rest, her stamina superhuman. They whispered that entire armies would surrender at the mere news that it was Amina herself leading the opposing force. And then there were the darker, more personal legends, the ones spoken in hushed tones. It was said that in every town she conquered, she would take a handsome man as a lover for the night. But by dawn, he would be dead, executed to ensure he could never share secrets of her or her camp. Is this story true? Or is it a myth? A tale twisted by the fear and awe she inspired? We may never know for sure, but the legend itself tells us something powerful. In a world dominated by men, she had become so formidable, so intimidating, that people created myths to explain her power. Men in power were not used to fearing a woman. Amina forced them to learn. Amina ruled for over 30 years, a long and prosperous reign built on trade and tribute. The caravan routes she controlled flowed with wealth, and under her watchful eye, Zazzau became the undisputed center of power in the region. No one dared to threaten her empire without paying a heavy price, but even the greatest warrior queen cannot outrun time. The details of her end are shrouded in legend, but the spirit of the story is consistent. One final campaign, one enemy too far from home, one battle too deep in foreign lands. The legend says, Amina died as she had lived, on campaign, still in her armor, still fighting. She didn't die peacefully in a palace bed, fading away into silence. She died on the frontier, on the edge of her next conquest. Today, her story lives on, pieced together from oral histories, archaeological finds, and the faint outlines of her walls, now half swallowed by the earth. It survives in the memory of a queen who refused to be a pawn in anyone's game, who refused to be an ornament on a throne. Amina of Zazzau was more than a queen. She was a commander, a conqueror, and an enduring symbol of what happens when a woman refuses to be silenced in a world built to keep her quiet. While other rulers held court from a cushioned throne, she ruled her empire from the saddle of a warhorse on the front line. She didn't just wear a crown, she turned it into a weapon. If Amina's story shook the way you think about queens and power, imagine how many more warrior queens history has buried. Follow this journey, hit that subscribe button, and let's drag every forgotten, powerful queen back into the spotlight, one unstoppable story at a time.